Hey guys, and welcome to the first TGFC podcast. We want to take time in the middle of the week and just spend some more time discussing what's going on in the community around us, what God is showing us, revealing us. Maybe sometimes we're going to be diving into scripture. Sometimes we may just be talking about world culture and context. Sometimes it may be just an ask your pastor setting. And so if you have questions or something on your mind or your heart that you want answered, it's always good to just drop those in the comments below and we could gather those up and do an episode of just ask your pastor a question. I want to encourage you guys, if this is your first time to the Good Fight Church page, go ahead and click like, smash that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm for us to get the message out there a little bit further. And if you enjoy the content and you feel like this is something that brought you benefit, go ahead and click subscribe and share this with your friends so that we can get out the message that God has laid on our hearts. And so one of the things that we're hoping to discuss today is how big the difference has been since we've had the coronavirus going on, since this crisis or this pandemic has been happening. And so what are some things, what's the biggest change that you felt in your home life?
Wow, I think there's so many, but if I had to narrow it down to one thing that I think I could take a positive from where I was to where we're going, would be, it was at the very beginning of the social distancing, and I'd spent like the first 3 days at home with the kids a lot more than usual. And I'm outside cooking burgers, and Jonah came up to me and he said, "Hey Dad, thanks for hanging out with me the last few days." Now you got to remember, he's 6, so this is an unusual conversation. And I smiled, and my heart broke instantly. And I was flipping the burgers, I was like, "Yeah, of course, why wouldn't I?" And I started to fumble my words, as if he was starting to argue with me, or he was trying to make a point. And I realized, okay, he's 6. He genuinely means this. And right then and there, I knew, wow, the way I was parenting before the social distancing started compared to the way I've had to change it is completely different. And I started to reflect back on what my priorities were before the social distancing compared to what they were during the social distancing, and then start to formulate a plan on how do I take the past that was good in the current situation, which is good, and carry that into a new normal. And so it's caused me to really reflect. And the biggest thing for perspective-wise is, how do I build new routines in today's crisis and carry it forward into the new normal?
Yeah.
And for me, it was, I've got to learn how to slow down. First of all, I think that's been a great tool for all of us. It's forced us to slow down, and especially with my family and my children. Because what I'm learning is what works for me does not work for each of my kiddos. Now, I've got Vivian, who's 9, and Jonah, who's 6. And both of them are just as tender-hearted as could be. And in the mornings, I haven't been in a routine where I get to spend a lot of time with them. Usually it's get up, brush your teeth, get your clothes on, let's get in the car, let's go to school. And then it's in the car going to school that we start to have the conversations of, okay, what does God want from us today? What do we say? Love God, love people, trust God, trust our teachers. And we start going through that, and that's my time of connection. And I've had it all wrong this whole time. Is what I've noticed is my kids need that connection the very first thing. And it broke my heart, because every week, especially when we were in the Jonah series and we were in Hebrews, we talked through a lot of this, and in 1 John especially a couple years ago, is the author generally, or more often than not, would start off with connecting with us before he would correct us. And I believe that to be biblically correct, is that God will always connect with us before he corrects us. And that's something I want to take into the new normal routine, but I've had to build it and be very, very intentional with my words, with my thoughts, with my attitudes, and my actions with my children. Is when I get up now, as I get into the Word, then I get up and ask them, how are you this morning? That's something that was completely foreign. You think it would be, but as a parent, man, I get going and blowing so fast in the mornings that I don't usually slow down enough to say, "Hey, Vivian, how'd you sleep? Jonah, what have you been doing for the first 30 minutes this morning? And what do you want to do today?" And ask them questions that spark their interest and gets their heart going and moving in the right direction. because if you're like me, and I know some of you are, is as soon as we wake up, our feet hit the ground and we start running towards what we feel is our purpose. And I want you to know that my purpose is never without my family. It involves my family from the very moments, the very beginning of the day. And I was trying to make my purpose happen without them. And so I'm trying to reprioritize and take the old, which was working, and the new, which is working now, and how do I carry that into a new routine?
That's so good. You said a couple of things that really stuck out to me. I think connect before you correct is huge. I talk about it all the time with how I raise my daughters and how I want to love them well and be a part of their lives. Is I always want to let them know, like, hey, I care about you, I love you, I see you, and then correct. But when we're going so fast and we're not slowed down, it's easier to just correct before we actually take time to let them know, like, hey, you're loved. You have a place in this family, you know, and I think that's one of the benefits of this crisis is it's caused us to slow down and maybe recognize some of those mistakes that we've had in our lives or in our parenting or maybe even in just our perspective. Another thing that you highlighted, and I think this is huge whenever we're talking about something like this in a global situation. There is a ton of negative. You know, like there just is a lot. There are a lot of bad things that are happening. There's economies that are crashing. There are people that are dying. There are families that are distanced from each other that can't spend time with each other. People that can't go to birthdays or funerals, and there's a lot of stuff that just really does stink about this whole situation.
Yeah.
But my philosophy is, if I can't change it, then why should I worry about it? Why should I focus on it? Why should my perspective be on it? And I found myself in this season, especially when it first started, Googling almost every day, how many infected by the coronavirus? Where's the coronavirus?
Yeah.
What is, almost every single day, just Googling. And as this has progressed in the time frame that it's been going on, like 2 months now that it's really kind of blown out of proportion, and I've realized that my focus has changed to more godly principles. What are things that I can handle? What are things that I can change? What are things that I can be a part of? And I've realized that my perspective inside of my family has done the same thing, because in the beginning it's been, I don't really want to make dinner. I want to go out to eat. Why are all the restaurants closed? I can't believe that this is happening, And then it's like, hey, let's have dinner together as a family tonight. Like, let's sit and relax together. Like, let's just spend some time playing. I remember I had time to go and build my daughter a sandbox, and then me and her went outside and we just sat and we played. And something that really didn't happen often is been happening a lot more. And I think the beauty of it is that the length of time that everything's gone on now is it's given us a chance to actually change our habits. Not just have a temporary change in our behaviors, but actually maybe a long-term change in the way that we respond to our families, the way that we respond to our jobs, the way that we respond to all of these things in life. And I think it's a more godly perspective,
I agree.
I think it's something that really just brings us into the heart of the Father that says, hey, rest, relax, be restored, reflect on my goodness, reflect on the things that have been hard, and have a proper perspective. And that's one of the things we talked about in youth this last week. Was we talked about what is our perspective. And it's hard because we want to be anxious, we want to be worried. I think it gives us something to think about, Yeah. But the Bible tells us that who by worrying can add a single day to their life, Yeah. And it says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will have enough trouble of its own. And so how about I just have a proper perspective of today? How about I have just a good perspective of what are the good things that have come out of this? Because we could sit around all day long and we could list the bad, the ugly, the hurtful, the things that are going to be devastating. But if we can't change them, how about we just sit and we say, what has drawn my heart closer to the Father? What is giving me a place in His presence right now?
That's good.
And so one of the questions that I have been asking myself is, what am I hoping to take from this, that I've gained from this? What is that new habit that I want to bring into my new life? So are there any new habits that you've seen that you really hope to continue with, maybe in business or in the church world or just in your family life?
Yeah, those are all great questions, and for me personally, right now that what I've seen and what I'm already implementing in my life and in my family's life is, are we reflecting on what it is God is providing for us? I think during the season, like you said at the very beginning, the perspective It's changed a lot in the last month, but it started off with, I can't go to the movies now. I can't go get some dinner right now. I can't do this. I can't do that. And my children were mimicking and mirroring my attitude and my wife's attitude and heart as well, because we were going through that. It was all new to all of us. And so we started to reflect after Jonah had come to me and said, thank you for hanging out with me. And I'm like, why is my kid, you know what I mean? Like that really hurt me. And so we started to talk to them daily and still doing it daily, talking about, let's not focus on the things that we can't do, but let's focus on the things that we can do. And just the slight change of wording, we've seen the attitudes start to slowly come around. And one thing that we wanted to focus on was getting back to the basics. We don't think about that a lot in our life. Like, we should have these basic things that we do, like getting up and brushing our teeth and flossing and showering, all these things that we do in our routines. But are we doing that spiritually? Are we doing that emotionally? Are we doing that as a family together and not just as individuals that happen to live under the same roof as one another? And so one thing that we're going to take forward is hopefully the connecting before we correct. But each day we have set up a unique time at 6:30 in the afternoon that my family is going to get together, and my children are going to watch Right Now Media videos, which is the Christian Netflix, and it teaches them stories, biblical stories, and then actually sit down and ask them questions about it. Not just put them in front of a TV or an iPad, which, let's be honest, before this happened, is sometimes I get going so fast. My perspective was, I'll get to that when I get to it, and I was totally taking for granted just the privilege it is to be a parent. And one thing that I want to take forward is getting back to the basics, and then also understanding that our purpose, each of us have a purpose, and it's not to do ministry, but it's to live ministry. And that's the big shift for me, is when I start to take things for granted, I start to do ministry. Because that's what I'm called to do. That's what I should be doing. This is what I'm designed to do. And that's not true. I am designed to be a lover of God and to be a husband and to be a father. It just so happens that my life is ministry. And I had gotten those backwards. And it's a very dangerous ground for all of us, is sometimes we can take what's good and beautiful. Like the Bible says, everything is permissible, but it doesn't mean that's beneficial. And I'm doing things that's supposed to be this permissible, beautiful thing, and I've taken it from God and made it mine. And I say, okay, family, this is what's most important, ministry. And I'm stepping out of that and not taking for granted the things of fatherhood and being a good husband and being a follower of Christ first and foremost. And that's going to be the big change, or the big takeaway for us, is let's not do ministry, but how can we live ministry as a family? And I think it starts with those basics, prioritization of the little things of reading the Word, having community not only with my friends and family, but with my children and my spouse. Because if it's not strong at the core, everything else will eventually fall apart. So that, to me, is reflecting, getting back to the basics, and not doing ministry, but living ministry as a family.
And it's so good. I realize for me personally, the two things that the enemy is trying to utilize in this season against me is idleness and isolation, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that I can't really go and hang out with people and spend time with people, and just the idleness that comes with sitting around and not doing much. And I realized early on, I think one of the biggest temptations for people is video games on their phone, and Facebook and Netflix. And I know the Tiger King got crazy hyped up during this season. And I think it's interesting. But one of the things I want to take away is something that really helped me to fight off the enemy in these moments. Because the Bible tells us that if you turn to God, you resist the enemy, and he'll flee, right? And so I think that the two things that I want to do is, in my isolation, I want to turn to the comfort of the Father and not the comfort of my sin, right? Or the comfort of my complacency, right? I want to do those things. And then inside of the idleness, I want to resist the enemy. And so the thing is resistance is this active thing. It's not just this passive where I just sit and I say, I hope the enemy leaves me alone.
Right.
It's where I push back a little bit. And so one of the ways that I found to really do that is some of my hobbies, taking time to work with video, or taking some time to go out and work on my yard and to try to get grass to grow. I've got weeds everywhere, and so I'm trying to take my yard from a weed-infested yard to actually grass. And so little things that I procrastinate on, or that I don't put a priority on, or that I make myself so exhausted or so burnt out that I just want to fall back into those idle things that let me kind of disconnect. And so I think what this has done is let me reset long enough to move into some of those hobbies, or move into some of those productive behaviors. And so I think that for us, for my family, as we move out of this, I think that those are the two things that have been almost a revelation to us. I know that we've known it, but there's just been practical, is that the enemy is trying to get us in our idleness and in our isolation. And this is prime time for the enemy if we have an incorrect perspective. I mean, it just is. It's a great time for him to move into our lives and start to creep into to sin just taking a hold on us. Mm-hmm. But if we're willing to have a proper perspective, we can recognize that we're never isolated. We're in the presence of the Father, and we're never idle. We're in the ministry of the Father, right? And so we've got a lot of things. I love what you said. We're not called to do ministry. We're called to live ministry, And so I think in recap, I think some of the things that that both of us are trying hard to remember is that family is a priority. We've got to reflect on the things that are beautiful. We've got to reflect on the things that were good and where God has led us from and where He's led us to, and just have a right perspective inside of these different scenarios,
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone is, when was the last time that we've been afforded this opportunity?
Yeah.
To talk about the benefits of crisis almost sounds like we're poking fun of it, but we're not.
Yeah.
I look at it as like, especially since I have children, it was a little bit easier to make changes before children. But now that my family's growing and the foundation has gotten wider and wider, there's never a good time for change is what we think. But unless there's something new, something broken, or something constrained upon us, very likely that we would not change. I mean, why would we change?
Yes.
And so why not use this as a time or an opportunity to reset? I love what you said is, we're going to use this time to reset and to focus back on the basics, man. And that's, to me, has been huge, that mindset, just slight change of wording. But it goes a long way with my family, especially.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I definitely hope that this has provided some benefit for you guys. I hope that listening in to some of the benefits of crisis can bring value to your life. And so again, if you're new to this channel, we want to encourage you, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can get more content like this throughout the week. And we want to encourage you to join us at the Good Fight Church on our Facebook page, at our website. We're going to be streaming live in many different platforms, even right here on YouTube. And so if you want to join us every Sunday at 11:15, we're going to be putting out a great message, gospel-centered, biblically driven, so that people can get to know the gospel and the lost can be saved through this digital technology that we've been blessed with. And so we hope that you guys have a great week. We want to tell you both welcome home and to go out and fight the good fight.